You're listening to the Monday Night Roundtable. For the next 2 hours, we'll talk local high school sports with the voice of the Oneida Indians, Tim Smith.
Richter close to the goal line. Touchdown Indians! Caden Richter, 15-yard touchdown run.
The voice of the Scott Highlanders, Rick Keaton.
Got him. Up the sideline, and a Cofield player gives that 40 yards behind the boom.
Broadcast live from El Rey and Oneida. You're invited to be a part of the show. Produced by the IH Sports Network, the Roundtable begins now.
Good Monday evening, everybody. Welcome to the IHSN Sports Roundtable. We are live from El Rey in Oneida. I invite you to stop in and join us. We'll be here for the next 2 hours tonight. If you want to stop by, we've got a lot to come. We've got our players of the game from Friday night who are going to join us. We've got some soccer players who are going to join us. We've got some middle school football coaches who are going to join us. We've got our legend of the game. We'll be joining Rick Keaton in just a little while as well. A lot to come over the next 2 hours. To my left is Kevin Akers filling in for the voice of the Indians, Tim Smith tonight. Tim is in Orlando. Let's all feel sorry for him. It is a work trip, not a pleasure trip. But Tim can't be here tonight. Kevin is filling in, and to my right, of course, as always, Rick Keaton, the voice of the Highlanders. And guys, thank you for joining us as always. Kevin, I got to start off with you and ask you, what in the world happened on the pick 'em panel this week?
Made a bunch of bad picks.
That was as bad as Tennessee getting beat at home by Georgia State a couple of years ago. 3-7, by the way, for anybody who's not seen that yet.
And I was one game back of Mark, and that's not going to happen now.
Yes, and so if there's one, because we can't let Mark win this in year one because his head, he won't be able to get through the door, and now he's kind of out there by himself. You were the one hope to beat him. So now you got work to do.
I overthought everything. I was just looking at history and stuff, and you can't do that when you're doing high school football. I mean, one season to the next, you all know it can just change a whole lot. And I just couldn't see certain teams beating other ones, and they did. So there you go.
Let's talk about high school football. Friday night, Oneida coming off a 28-14 loss to York Institute on Friday. Scott High's coming off a 56-8 loss to Carter. We'll talk about both of those two games. Rick, I'm going to swing over here and start with you. Scott High, I think we all felt like that would be a competitive game, and probably we were all caught off guard a little bit, man. We knew that Carter had a really good quarterback, a lot of good playmakers on offense, so we knew that they were going to have an offense that would be a challenge to stop. But they just came out, and to be frank, they made it look kind of easy in that first half, running out to a 49-0 lead.
The good news is we won the second half. The bad news is we trailed 49-0 at halftime, and so there's nothing that we can say that's really good about that. We didn't step up. We didn't challenge. We didn't push them around. Well, we let the receivers for the team just play at a level, and speed has a whole lot to do with that, but they play at a level that we can't duplicate in practice. So as we worry about that, as we decide what we want to do, we now can establish the fact Carter is a good football team. If you're going to beat them, you got to smash them in the mouth. You've got to contain the receivers. You've got to figure out a way to chip those receivers on the line of scrimmage and not let them get the big runs downfield. And to a certain degree, I felt like our tackling may have improved, but statistically, it doesn't show that at all.
And Carter won the game by 48 points. Now, here's the thing. Scott High's got a team. I don't feel like Scott High's 48 points worse than Carter.
No.
And you've got a team coming up this week that's going to be visiting your place that's probably not quite as good as Carter was in Pigeon Forge. And so this is an opportunity for Scott High to take the step forward that it's wanted to take for the past couple of weeks. But you got to be ready to go. I didn't feel like they were ready to go on Friday night.
Well, I didn't either. And for whatever reason that may be, the bus ride over there, the traffic jam, the whatever you want to call it. This week they take on a Pigeon Forge team that is downright physical. They like to push on you and push on you. They like to get their running game going. They've got multiple good backs that can carry the ball and pick up yardage there. And will they watch the film of the first four Highlander games and see how everybody has picked on us through the air? The kind of pressure that the other teams have put on our back half of the secondary, and see what they can do that way? Or would they stay with their true form, which is basically just to run the ball? They throw the ball, just to keep you honest. more or less. And that was completely opposite of Carter. Carter was going to throw the ball, and they were going to throw the ball. And it makes no difference if you stop them or don't. They're going to throw the ball and run occasionally just to show you we can do that too.
Yeah, the difference in styles between Carter and Pigeon Forge is interesting because they're mirror opposites of one another. And the thing with Scott High, and we've talked about this every week, against Coalfield, Scott High started off so strong. And then Coalfield kind of smacked him in the mouth a little bit, and they didn't really respond too well from that. Came back out the next week against South Dole and really responded well in that second game against South Dole. Couldn't come all the way back in that game, but made a nice effort, especially in the second half. Last week started off slow, or 2 weeks ago started off slow against Austin East, but then in the second half really played much, much better. And it wasn't all bad Friday night. I mean, there were some takeaways from that game. There were some bright spots here and there, especially as you said in the second half. Scott High did win the second half 8-7 as far as that goes. And there were some bright spots. The play I thought of Brady Strunk and Alton Whaley and those guys who were carrying the football. Brady made a nice touchdown pass to Elijah Fletcher in that second half. Scott High did some things well. It's just obviously the hole had been dug by that point.
Well, you get so far behind, there's no way you can make it up. They're pretty smart young men. They stand there, they look at the scoreboard, and they see that and say, look, we're only 7 touchdowns behind, but, there's only 12 minutes to go in the game. There's no realistic way to do that. I want to add onto that just a little bit, and Ethan Anderson picked up 2 huge first downs, and the second one of those was a lot of individual effort as he carried a lot of the Carter players with him to pick up the first down. The snap may have been a little off. Maybe he felt the pressure was coming at him, but on both occasions he ran left out of punt formation and picked up first downs that should have given us a spark, should have helped us maintain those possessions, should have helped us do more offensively. And I said it in my pregame the other night and probably during the game. Our offensive consistency since the South Dole game has really fallen way off. We cannot sustain drives. When we do, we get to the other team's 35. A penalty hurts. Drop pass hurts. Tackle for a loss, a sack on the quarterback. And suddenly you're looking there at 4th down and long, and Coach Harris has a tendency on the positive side of the field that he'll go for him on 4th down. But I think the other night we were sitting there 4th and 22. Those are some instances that you really need to stay away from if at all possible.
And I guess the takeaway to kind of sum up all of what we've talked about is Scott High has yet to put together 4 quarters of football. Played really well in the first quarter against Coalfield, played good the 3rd and 4th quarters against South Dole, and somewhat in the first quarter of that game, played well in the 3rd and 4th quarters last week. It would be great against Pigeon Forge if they can come out and put together 4 quarters of football, because if and when they do that, and when a team like Scott High, especially when you've got a new coaching staff in place, you hear it said all the time, it's almost cliche, you've got to learn how to win. And so you expect these growing pains, and that's what they're kind of going through right now, is growing pains. But when that happens and they put together 4 quarters, a team like Pigeon Forge can absolutely be beat.
Coach Harris says that many times. We have to learn how to win. It's the young men out on the field have to learn how to win. You take Austin East, you take Carter, the last 2 games. I would have told you, and I still think that those 2 teams playing South Dole, I think, is my favorite to beat those 2 teams.
Absolutely.
And yet we played so lights out, 420-something yards of offense that night at South Dole. And then we have failed. It's 194 yards against Austin East, and then total offense against Carter, 94 yards.
Wow.
And that's not the consistency that Coach Harris is looking for, nor the other assistant coaches, and I don't think most of the members on the offensive team. They expect to do better. It's when you let the other team get up by 2 scores, 3 scores, 4 scores, suddenly the mind game, well, there may not be a mind game. Those kids may start checking out, thinking about next Friday night.
All right, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about next Friday night in just a minute. Homecoming Friday night, by the way, and Pigeon Forge coming into town. But I want to swing over here to Kevin, and I feel like I've got a rookie sitting next to me. Tim Smith is the Griswold veteran, and Kevin filling in for his first time. But I appreciate you being here. I've given you some grief, but if you weren't here, we would be in trouble without Tim. Oneida had a huge game against York on Friday night. If you wanted to win a region championship, you really needed to win that game. York jumps out to a 28-0 lead. Really dominated the first half, and they did it methodically. They scored on the 60-whatever-yard touchdown play on third down to start the game on their first drive. But then after that, it was more just kind of grinded out and mixing the pass and the run. Really did a great job. But the second half was much, much better for Oneida.
Well, get back to that first half, defense did a great job. We had them 3rd and 8 on their very first possession. Threw a little screen pass off to the left, and he just cut the corner and was gone, and just like that. And they had a lot of speed. They had a lot of talent. Then, like you said, it was pretty methodical the rest of the way. And we had it down. Looked like we was going to score just right before half.
4-yard line.
4-yard line. Had a couple of penalties that pushed it back. And with, I think it was about 1:04 left to go in the half, they get the ball and threw about a 60-yard pass, got it down around about the 30-yard line, and then scored with just a few seconds left to go. And that was like, oh, my goodness, what are you going to do? It's 28-0. But they went in. They didn't give up. They went in, made some adjustments at the halftime, and came out and pretty much just shut their offense down. They was able to move a little bit, but, of course, as you all know, they did not score. We scored twice. Had a pretty good chance there later on to score again, which could have made it a one-score football game, and it just didn't work out. And just really did a good job in the second half of saying, yeah, we're down 28-0, but we can still come back and win this game, and just do it one step at a time. And that's what they did, and they almost was able to get in there and actually pull that thing off. But once again, now we're behind the 8 ball. We're going to have to win out to get a home playoff game, and that's going to be against Rockwood and Monterey coming up here in a few weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough road to hoe after you drop this one to York. But I believe they can pull it off, but they're going to have to be focused and really play some good football.
The backbreaker to me felt like York comes out, they hit a couple of big plays, they go up 14-0, but then that grinded out drive where they took more than 6 minutes off the clock to end the first quarter, start the second quarter, they go up 21-0. That was tough. But as you said, Oneida came back from that, had the ball first and goal on the 4-yard line, but then there were back-to-back penalties. And I got to tell you, I agree with John L's initial take, and I think Mark Matthews too. I went back and I watched that. I can't find a hold in there because, in a big scrum in the middle of the field, how in the world are you going to call a holding penalty, right? You never see a hold in that situation. So I thought there had to be something egregious that jumped out at the official. I didn't see anything. And that's not to say it didn't happen. Obviously, the official was much closer to the play than our camera was. But tough call, tough play. It backs them up. They wind up missing a field goal. Then the real backbreaker was when York goes right down the field. They score on the 4th down play off a deflection on 4th and goal with 9 seconds left in the half, went up 28-0. But two ways teams can respond to that. One thing is you come out in the second half and you say there's no way we can overcome 28-0, and you lay down and you lick your wounds. The other thing is you come back out ready to fight. I feel like Oneida came out ready to fight.
Did.
That's going to pay dividends, I got to think, down the road against teams like Monterey and Rockwood, because those are two crucial football games where you got to go on the road and you got to win both of those. Number one, you want a home playoff game, but even if for whatever reason you can't get a home playoff game, I don't think anybody wants to go to Upper East Tennessee and face the number one team in the state in Hampton in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, you got Hampton, they're number one, then you got South Green, and we've all got experience of what can happen when you go to South Green in a playoff game. We don't want to revisit that. But did real well at South Green last year. Avenged that. And, of course, the 2 years before that probably had a little bit to do with that too, getting motivated. But, once again, you do not want to have to travel. Like the regions that are around Knoxville and stuff, they might have to travel 30 minutes or something to the other region. We're looking at 2 to 3 hours. So you want to try to be home. And we got to take care of business against Rockwood in a couple of weeks, and then Monterey right after that. So,
and it's not just a 3-hour road trip; it is the fact that Hampton is laying the wood to everybody that they're playing right now.
They brought pretty much everybody back from last year, and they went to state championship. And they haven't had a tight game yet.
All right, we're going to talk more about the Monterey and the Rockwood games, about the Pigeon Forge game, and Oneida this Friday night is homecoming for the Indians too. We'll talk about that.
Northview Academy.
Against Northview Academy. A lot more to come. We're just getting started. We got soccer to come. We got middle school football to come and more. Plus our legend of the game later on as well. We'll continue after this. Welcome back to the IHSN Sports Roundtable. We are at El Rey in Oneida. Invite you to come on out and join us tonight if you're in the area. We're just getting started. We've got an hour and 45 minutes to go. A lot of folks in El Rey tonight. Lorenzo's walking around here somewhere counting the money. Although there are a lot of folks in here tonight, but there are some empty tables as well. If you want to get on out and join us, we invite you to do so. Guys, we talked about the fact that it's homecoming coming up this Friday night. Scott High's got Pigeon Forge. Oneida's got Northview Academy, so 2 teams from Sevier County coming over. We're going to talk about those 2 games, and let's lead into that by talking about some scores from Friday night. I'm going to start with Oneida's region, Region 2, 2A. And, of course, we know York beat Oneida 28-14 to really take the driver's seat in that for the region championship. Another game, and to me this was a little bit of a surprise. I'll get your take on that. Monterey defeated Rockwood 28-14. Then the other game in the region, Wartburg defeated Midway 26-7. First win for Coach Dustin Peels as the head coach down at Wartburg. But your thoughts on how the region is shaping up now with York obviously as the front runner, but then after that it's just a big mix.
Yeah, a lot of people were picking Monterey to win the region. And, once they lost to York and lost in the fashion that they lost to York, people started thinking, well, maybe they're not as good as they were. But everybody still figures, Rockwood is going to be one of the top contenders. And they go over to Monterey and then get beat like that. So, last year, if you remember, we had a 3-way tie at the top, 3 teams at 3-1. And wouldn't be a bit surprised if we don't see that similar deal again this year. Wouldn't surprise me a bit to see York, Monterey, Rockwood, Oneida all just right there in the mix right up to the very end to see who comes out on top.
If Rockwood can beat York, and that's what would have to happen to create that. Right.
I don't personally think that they can, but I didn't think Rockwood would get beat by Monterey the way it did.
I will never count out a John Webb football team. John Webb is one of the best in the business. However, after seeing York, and I sat here last week and told Tim, I said, Tim, listen, Oneida's defense is good enough that Oneida's going to keep York off balance in this game. York is the real deal, and it's and we got to give props to Derwin Wright because he stepped away for a few years, and that York program went down, and now he's back, first year back, and it's amazing what he has done in less than 1 year there.
Yes, it is. Yeah, he's done a great job. Of course, he's a great coach over there. He's done wonders with them for years. Remember, we went over a few years ago and played them, and we just got pounded over there. They put like 4 players out. Some of them was some players that ended up going to the next level playing too. And, they were really, really tough. And then it was surprising the way they just kind of dropped off just immediately after he left. And talked him into coming back and coaching, and they definitely getting the benefits from him being there.
And, Rick, I'll turn to you now and talk about Region 2 4A. Of course, Carter beating Scott High. That was a big game. If Carter had any hopes at all, having already lost a region game, of making the playoffs, they had to have that win, and they got that win. Now, they still got a hill to climb if they want to get back in the playoff race, but that was a big win for them. The other 2 games in the region, Anderson County beating South Dole 35-7. I don't think that surprised anybody.
Not at all.
Then a basketball game broke out between Fulton and Gibbs, 61-55. And how much does that make you cringe knowing that both of those 2 games are still on the schedule for Scott High?
Well, I may take those 2 nights off, just to be honest with you, and go watch somebody else those 2 nights. Anderson County, I've referred to them before as a beast because they've got all the tools. They've got everything that they need in place. Huge program, probably got 70-plus kids out on their roster. Before, we were thinking, hey, who's the 2 team? Well, is it South Dole? Is it going to be Fulton? Could a Carter or a Gibbs step up and be in that mix for the number 2 team in the region? I think now all those things are certainly in play. Anderson County, I feel, will take care of business against Fulton. I think they'll take care of business against anybody else.
Well, they've already beaten Fulton.
All right. And so, we've got them the last game of the year. So, by that time, I think by the time we play Anderson County the last game, I think they're the number 1 seed, and you're fighting to see who's 2, 3. And maybe 4 in that one. So it's another strong region. Until last year when the TSSAA realigned and we ended up playing Class 4 ball and against these teams here. Years ago, we were same region or district as Fulton. We've been there with Gibbs. We've been there with Anderson County before. So we've seen these teams over and over and over, and everybody used to pity us, pity the Highlanders, because we're always playing against Alcoa. Well, we didn't gain any favors by being moved to a higher classification into a different region because all the big boys are still right there. Fulton, I think, seeing them resurge a little bit the last couple of years. They had been down. So they have resurged. you're looking at, is it an easier district? I think it's a tougher district than what we used to play in with the Alcoas and Gatlinburg Pittmans and the Pigeon Forges, Northview Academy, Austin East. It's a much tougher region to have to go into and play. Can we flex our muscles as well as some of these teams? On paper, it looks like no. But to Kevin's point a while ago, we play the games on the field. We don't play them on paper, and that's what people do. I'm sure you do that when you're doing your picks every week. You go look at the scores. You know, they played this team and beat them by so much, and that team played.
No, if you saw Kevin's picks this week, he didn't know.
He didn't do that.
Blindfolded himself.
Well, that's the reason I resigned from the pick'em panel years ago. I got tired of spending 2 hours comparing all this stuff to pick and not do any better than I would have just flipping a coin on any of them like that. But it's a tough region to play in. You're going to see, I want to say South Doyle will possibly hold on to the 2 seed. And I'm going to pick Fulton. I'm going to pick Carter and Gibbs to fight it out for 4.
Well, coming into the season, I would have thought South Doyle would probably be the 2. And when I look at this region, I go back to what Keith Shannon used to always say. And, of course, when he was coaching, it was Alcoa and CAK at the time. And he said the lights do not shine brighter than they do right here. And why wouldn't you relish the opportunity? And what he always said was, don't feel sorry for us. Yeah. We want to play these teams, and because it's a great opportunity for our program.
Here's a very interesting stat. Now, this is prior to last year. Now, Alcoa, they still won a state championship last year. But prior to last year, someone in the same, however it's called, district or region, that the Highlanders have been in, had been in the state championship game or won the state championship game 19 out of 20 years.
That's incredible.
I mean, you go back to Livingston, finished the regular season in 2005, 5 wins, 5 losses.
Finished 4th place.
Finished, just snuck in to get the 4 seed on it, won their next 5 games in the state championship. All things are certainly possible, but the point I'm making is many of those state championships were by Alcoa, but you did have a Livingston sneak in there. But can you imagine playing in a district or region where a team for 20 years or 19 of 20 years goes into a state championship game, either it finishes as a runner-up or the state champion?
And I think we're in agreement that that's probably going to happen again this year. You've seen Anderson County in person. I'm not yet to see them in person yet, but I've watched plenty of video, and we've been keeping an eye on Greenville as well. And this looks like the year that Anderson County can finally get past Greenville and maybe represent the east side of the state in that 4A championship game.
Well, they've done a lot in the past year. They went out and found a truly solid defensive coach in Tony Lambert.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, they a lot of times past years they have had to worry about giving up a lot of points to other teams. Well, the defense, I think, has changed that a little bit this year, and they can put athletes on the field. They've got a quarterback that's number 2 in East Tennessee in passing yards right now at almost just shy of 1,400 yards. They've got a number 2 running back in Moog that is stepping up to step in for the original starter. Moog is just a junior. He will end up with a D1 scholarship someplace. The running back in front of him already had the D1 scholarship in his pocket. I mean, so, and they get their quarterback back. They lost Martinez last year, and their season just sort of went from here, and then it fell off like this. They've got him back. If he stays healthy, can throw the ball, the receivers stay healthy, Anderson County is a do-it-all type team.
And then behind Anderson County, you've got South Doyle, who has been in 5A for years. They're in 4A now, doing very well. Obviously, probably, as you say, going to wind up being the runner-up there in that region. You've got Fulton, which is, again, as you said, they're starting to resurge a little bit. And then Gibbs, a team, Scott Hyde just lucks out and moves into this region at a time when Gibbs is playing the best ball that they've played maybe in program history. I mean, they put up 55 points on Fulton, which is amazing. All right, let's talk about some other scores against teams that we've seen or we're going to see. We'll start with a team that Scott High has already faced and that Oneida is about to. Austin East defeated Northview Academy in overtime Friday night, 26-20. It was Alcoa over Pigeon Forge, 46-20. That game, to me, was surprisingly close. We'll see. Coalfield Okay, everybody, Oakdale was everybody's darling on this side of the state. Great start to the season for the Eagles, and man, Coalfield just absolutely made a statement on Thursday night, 68-8. I think Coalfield showed that they're probably going to be a team to beat in 1A football, as we probably could have expected that they would be. Harriman over Sunbright, 46-8. Gatlinburg over Union County, 47-0. Carnes over Campbell County, 36-33. Oliver Springs over Greenback, 21-0. And it was Powell over Clinton, 29-22, and Unaka defeated Jellicoe 46-7. Okay, so guys, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we've got soccer players here. We're going to talk a little soccer. We're going to talk a little middle school football. We're also going to do our trivia question right after this. Welcome back to the IHSN Sports Roundtable. We are at El Rey. And glad to have you along tonight. Still invite you to come out and join us if you would like to. We've still got an hour and a half to go, so that's plenty of time to stop on by. We got a trivia question now. Let me give you the phone number up front. If you know the answer to our trivia question, 539-4616. Okay, so Rick Keaton, it is homecoming week. You don't know the question that I'm about to ask, but I know that you know the answer when you hear the question, but don't answer it.
Okay.
Okay, so Caitlin Butts is defending homecoming queen at Scott High School. There's going to be another homecoming queen crowned this Friday night, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, will be the 52nd, maybe, homecoming queen that Scott High is crowned.
Yes.
The question is, who was the very first football homecoming queen at Scott High School? And if you know the answer to that, again, you can text 539-4616. Okay, we're joined by Cameron Kennedy and Aaliyah Douglas, Oneida High School soccer. Guys, thank you for joining us.
I know the answer.
Congratulations on what has been a great start to the season so far. And I say that, I know that your record is probably not where you would like for it to be, but win or lose, and you guys lost a couple of close ones last week, every game that you've been in so far has been close, has gone right down to the wire. So talk about the season so far and where you stand and what you feel like that you still need to improve on going forward.
I mean, I think that we work really, really hard as a team, especially, and I still think that's something that we need to work on is just the cohesiveness of the team. But we work hard every week. We try our best, but I know the results aren't great, but we're working hard.
But again, every game has been so close, and Cameron, that includes the game against Cumberland Gap on Thursday. You guys had already come back from a 4-0 deficit against Corbin on Monday, and then on Thursday you find yourselves in a hole again, came all the way back to tie that game. Then there was a call late in the game, and Cumberland Gap gets a penalty kick. Now, I'll just ask you, because you were fairly close to that play as it unfolded. Was it a penalty?
I personally don't think it was.
I don't think anybody thinks it was. You're going to see Cumberland Gap again, though, and probably a few more times as you go through this season. So talk about, well, twice at least. So talk about what you've got to do to get over the hump against Cumberland Gap the next time you face them.
I think it'll look a lot like it did last year. You know, we see them 3 times, and I think last year we did lose them the first time, but the other 2 games is when it really counts. So I think we can, just knowing that they're a big rival, we kind of got that first game out of the way, so it'll be a lot better the next 2 times.
And to be clear, and just like last year, you lost to Cumberland Gap, and last year's regular season game was not really that competitive. This year, it was anybody's game. That doesn't really make a difference. This game didn't really count. The only thing this game decided is where you play that postseason game at. So now you know you've got to go to Cumberland Gap in the district tournament, assuming you make it that far. I think you guys will. You know you've got to go over there and play. But as you said, last year you were faced with that same obstacle, and you went over there and you beat them in the district championship game, then got to play the region championship game at home. And so it's kind of the same trajectory as playing itself out once again.
Yeah.
All right. Aaliyah, you had a big personal milestone that you were closing in on, so we've got to talk about that. You have now accomplished that goal, and you are Oneida's all-time leading goal scorer. You set the record against Harriman, had 4 goals in that game. You went into that game with 60. You came out with 64. We were just talking during the break. I meant to look and see how many you're up to now. Neither one of us know, but you're closing in on 70 goals with a lot of soccer left to be played. It was just 3 years ago that the record was set by Macy Dunlap, and you played with Macy Dunlap when you guys were freshmen and she was a senior. Talk about that goal coming into this season. I know that was something that you were looking at as you came into this season and then finally accomplishing it.
I mean, I wasn't even expecting to get that close. I mean, everybody was telling me that I was going to beat it, and I was like, I don't think so. Macy said it pretty high. But I'm so thankful for her, especially because, I mean, she pushed me to be the best that I could be, and I would not be here without her, that's for sure.
And I remember as a freshman, when you were a freshman, and Macy set that goal, and I remember having a talk with Phil Newport at the time, and I think we both said at the time there is a chance that Aaliyah Douglas may one day break that, and so here we are. And let's be clear, Macy Dunlap has been very supportive of you and your pursuit of that record, and she was probably the first person that complimented you after you said it that night.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that play, it was early in the second half against Harriman, and you got the goal. Talk about that moment.
I was just beyond relieved. I was like, man, it's over. I can chill, but, I mean, I'm going to try to push it as hard as I can, get it as high as I can to maybe encourage a few other girls to try to get ahead.
So did you feel like that sometimes players get bogged down by the pursuit of goals and that sort of thing? Did you feel like that was a little bit of a distraction from you, or did it just push you to do better?
It really fueled my fire. I mean, I really wanted to get up there. But yeah.
And so now, as we said, you're pushing 70. Macy had 63, and before her, I think the record was 56. And so now you're closing in on 70, and still a lot of soccer to be played. Do you think you're going to set it to where it's going to be hard for anybody to ever break it, or do you think that it's just going to be another 3 or 4 years and someone's going to come along and be where you're at right now?
I don't know. I really hope that some of the girls that I played with will beat me. I really, really want them to beat me. I want it to, like, push them to work super hard and just blow me out of the water. That's what I want to happen.
And, of course, you could not have done that without and Coach Newport talks all the time about Alexia Jones assisting so many of those goals that you scored, and Cameron has assisted some of those goals, but your entire team around you. And so there are 5 of you seniors, 6 of you seniors, 5 of you guys that are on the field at all times, no matter what. And you guys have played soccer together your whole lives. So talk about, you're at this point in your career, you're seniors, you're chasing some pretty lofty team goals. We talked about the personal goals, but you guys are chasing some big team goals, the opportunity to be the first team from Oneida to ever get to a state tournament. Let's talk about playing together and how you need to rely on each other to accomplish those goals.
We're really starting to play good together now that we're kind of getting the flow of things, and even in the Cumberland Gap game, all 5 of us that was on the field, all of us scored against Gap, which is really good for us. But I think just us learning each game how to play with each other and having Claire back it's really starting to flow for us real good. And
offensively, we talked about Aaliyah's goals. You've had a big year offensively so far as well. A lot of goals, a lot of assists, and you're in that midfield position, so it can kind of go either way for you. So what's your preference? Do you like the opportunity to score, or do you like the opportunity to take the ball off the foot of the other team and play defense? What's your favorite?
I don't really have a preference, honestly. I prefer to – obviously I like to score. Everybody does. But I really like creating more opportunities for assists and things like that.
So as we get into the latter part of this season, it feels strange to say because it feels like the season just started, but we are getting into the latter part of the season. And I asked Phil Newport this before the season, and Alexia was on here a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her the same question. Now I'm going to ask both of you. In a few more weeks, because in another month, this thing is either going to be over or very close to being over. When this season is done, whenever that might be, and you step away from it, and you can look back and you can say, I'm totally satisfied with the way it turned out. I have no regrets. What does that look? What have you accomplished in order to be able to say that? And I'll ask both of you guys that. What's the ultimate goal?
I would love to go to state. Absolutely love to go to state. I know that we're definitely going to work hard enough to get there, but that would be beyond amazing for me.
Cameron?
I agree with Aaliyah. I think this team can do big things, and we're so close to being able to get that far.
And I asked Phil Newport jokingly before the season started, I said, I'm going to ask you when I've got you on the record next week, because we were coming up on an interview we were going to do. I'm going to ask you on the record, is it now or never for a state tournament? What he tells me is that this is just the start, and that next year's team and the year after that and the year after that, there's going to be more opportunities to get to the state tournament. So as trendsetters, whether you guys get to the state tournament or not, and obviously I think you've got a very good shot at getting there, whether you do or not, there's some young talent on this team, some sophomores like Jillian Cross and Presley Queener and some of these sophomores that are playing a lot of minutes. There are freshmen that are playing a lot of minutes. that's the team of the future. So what do you guys have to do as seniors to mentor them and get them in a position to where they can take those next steps forward in the years ahead?
I just think the best thing that we can do is cheer them on, lift them up, encourage them to try their hardest and be their best.
Anything to add to that?
Not much. That's pretty good.
All right, so as we get into the home stretch of this season, you guys have got a trip to Sevier County tomorrow. And what do you know about Sevier County? How does that – they're a big school. I know that, but I don't know anything about them from a soccer standpoint. I'm sure you guys maybe even have watched some film on Sevier County. What do you know about them?
We don't know a thing.
Okay.
We haven't heard a thing.
Right before this interview, we was looking them up on Max Preps.
So what do they look like on Max Preps?
The only thing we could really find is that they're a AAA team, and it's probably going to be – I think we can beat them, but they're a bigger school, so they're going to have a lot of talent. So we'll just have to keep trying through the game.
Okay, so tomorrow is a good warm-up game because Thursday is the one that is important. That's another region game, another district game against Rockwood. You got to go on the road again for that one. So you're going to be at Rockwood on Thursday night. Rockwood is a team that is good enough to give you guys some problems. As a matter of fact, was it last year or the year before they actually won that regular season game? What do you got to do on Thursday night to be ready for that one?
We've got to be aggressive and just attack them from the get-go, because they know us really well and they watch us really close. So we're going to have to be aggressive.
And they would love to win that game.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so you guys getting close to the end of this thing as seniors, and I got to ask you this. Coach Newport a couple of weeks ago, he said that he's got several players on his team that are eyeing that next level and would like to take that next step. And I know you would like to play at the next level, and so I'm going to give you both an opportunity because I have no idea, Cameron, what your plans are beyond high school. But both of you guys talk about whether you want to continue to play after this is all said and done and what you're looking at in that regard.
I'm really looking into college right now. I'm really looking at ETSU, UTC, and then maybe a couple smaller schools to play at, but I'm not sure yet.
And so do you have offers from I don't know how college recruiting works as compared to basketball or football. Do you have offers, or is that something that's still open?
It's still open. We've called them. We've talked to them a few times. I've been up there a lot to play with their girls, and it's been a process so far, that's for sure.
Cameron, how about it? Is high school the end of it, or do you look at taking that next step and continuing to play after this year?
I'd say after high school, this will be it for me.
Okay.
But that's kind of how I want it. I don't like a lot of pressure, like as far as playing for a college and stuff. I'm just looking to do high school, and that's it.
College sports is a lot of work. No matter which sport you play, it is a ton of work, and so many times kids want to play at that next level, and then they get there and they think, gosh, I don't know, I wasn't expecting this. So sometimes it's good just to enjoy the experience.
I've heard them talking about the camps that they go to, and it just seems so overwhelming. So I'm kind of staying away from it.
All right, Aaliyah Douglas and Cameron Kennedy. Aaliyah, congratulations on the record.
Thanks.
And good luck to you guys and to your team as you go forward. Tomorrow night at Sevier County, Thursday night at Rockwood. And real quickly, before we go to break, tell us when your next home game is going to be.
The 29th.
The 29th against Scott High.
Yes.
Okay, that's your next home game. All right, September the 29th, Oneida Scott High. That'll be a 6:30 start at Jane Terry Hoffman Field, and so a great opportunity to get out and see both of those teams play. Guys, thank you for joining us. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk middle school football as the IHSN Roundtable continues. Welcome back to the IHSN Roundtable live from El Rey as we are getting ready to talk to Johnny West and to Derek Boshears, the head coaches, co-head coaches.
We've never spent time to hash it out. Just go with it.
All right. Before we get into that, let me real quickly throw out the trivia question again because we've had some guesses. We have not had a correct guess as predicted. Rick Keaton knows the answer, but Rick Keaton is not eligible. The question is, as Scott High prepares to crown its 52nd homecoming queen on Friday night, who was the first ever football homecoming queen at Scott High School? That would have been back in 1971. And if you know the answer, text us at 539-4616. Johnny West, head coach of Robbins. Derek Boshears, head coach of Fairview, but circumstances happen, and now you guys are coaching together. What do you call yourselves?
Well, we wear Sky High jerseys.
Okay.
So they're all going there anyway, so we figure we might as well go ahead and just put Sky High jerseys.
They're all going there.
We've heard a little bit of
You're
everything.
making that commitment.
We're making as much as I can, yes.
Well, guys,
yes.
Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to invite Rick and Kevin to jump in here at any point that they want to. But first, I just got to ask, because if you go back a month ago, there was a possibility that Robbins might not be able to have a football team, and there was a possibility that Fairview might not be able to have a football team because of low numbers. And you guys were able to pull this thing together, and the kids come together and now play as one team. So just tell us how that came about.
No, we just kept talking. Everybody, we had about 16. Derek had 13 at the time. He's dropped to 1, and man, with numbers like that, it just makes it rough. And we've talked about before, maybe if we don't have a team, like I'd go help him, or if he didn't have one, he'd come help us. So we're just friends. It's worked out. And the kids are getting to play, and that's the number one thing. And the kids are enjoying it. They love it every day. We don't have any kids missing. They was never like, this is Fairview, this is Robbins. They just joined in. And, I mean, you come to practice, they're just there every day and having fun.
Yeah, it's a deal of where Fairview wasn't going to have a team. I mean, we were down to 12 kids, and you're just not going to make it through a whole year with 12 kids. That's what I'm at right now. So it was either combined with somebody or something, or just those kids were going to miss a year of football. And I hate to see kids miss a year. So this has worked about as good as it can. We're a little bit behind. There was no scrimmages, no spring. We've played 2 games because our schedule was kind of wonky with all that. But we're getting better every day, and we've got a potential to be a really good football team, but we're not right now. We're way behind, way behind.
Well, I want to commend anybody and everybody who was involved in making it happen, because it would have been easy for Robbins to say, Robbins is the second oldest middle school football team in the county behind Huntsville. It would have been easy to say, we're Robbins and we don't need any help. It would have been easy for Fairview to say, no, we're not going to go play with them. We want to be our own thing. It would have been devastating, I think, for that Scott High program for those 8th graders that are going to be up there next year to miss a year. So I commend everybody that was involved in making it happen to where the kids get to play.
Well, right. Because if you look at the Sky High team, a lot of kids are Fairview and Robbins kids. I mean, we have year after year sent kids to play. We really have.
I mean, we got 3 kids tonight here from Robbins, even one from 09, and I got Player of the Week.
So that was our big thing, the pipeline. And we're trying to get to a point, maybe sometimes we're behind because we have 5 middle schools that fight against each other sometimes. Maybe this is a little bridge to our kids where they're a little happier with each other right now. It's been as good with our kids as it could be, because we were kind of worried at first, is it going to be a bunch of Fairview kids in one corner? But man, it's been really good. This is the most fun my kids have had in football in my last 5 or 6 years that I can remember.
Like, just what you can do at practice and scheme wise. I mean, you're not running like 3 plays because you can't have enough depth and all that stuff. We're getting to open it up, and I think it'll help. I think the other night we had about 220 yards passing. Yeah. Just getting to 5 different receivers caught a ball, stuff like that. I mean, we get to do a lot of different stuff, and it's fun at practice. You get to do some 11-on-11, some 7-on-7 stuff. It's just not a grind all the time.
Let me ask you, this is not a Robbins issue, and it's not a Fairview issue. This is across the board, and I think from what Kevin Akers was telling me earlier, it's not even just a Scott County issue. It's outside Scott County as well. I think Rick was telling me Huntsville's got something like 18 kids. I would have never imagined that Huntsville would be that low. I drove by Birchfield on my way up here tonight and saw them. That's the first time I saw them, and they were practicing. I was amazed how few they had.
Early in the year. I don't know what they're at now. They were in the low mid-20s.
So everybody's struggling. What is it?
It's just
what are you guys competing against?
I think it's COVID. I mean, you had those years, the middle school years, they had that year off, and it's just, you see so many more kids out of shape, and it's hard to get those sort of tweener kids that might come out. Like your skill guys that are sort of athletic, they come out real good, but now your lineman type, they sort of have got there, and instead of maybe being, 160 pounds, they weigh 220 pounds, and it's a little harder.
You're competing with iPads and Xboxes. We didn't have that stuff when I was growing up. It's hard to get kids to want to play football right now. It's hard. It's hard to play football. Everybody understands that's done it. It's a grind every day. And
unless you're Jason Terry and you've got the luxury of having about 55 kids.
Unless you're Jason Terry, yes.
And it's just a numbers game right now. I know from when we won our region or state, whatever you want to call it, we had 104 kids in the school. We have 82 right now in middle school that can even play football. So we've lost all those.
Yeah, I think Fairview's down to when my brother went to school there was around 500 kids at that school, and there's 250 in the whole school. I think it was 88, 6-8 right now. So.
And then, that's something that we're going to have to address. And, I don't know how they're going to do it. But I'd say for the next few years, I'd like to keep this going just because the kids are having so much fun. You're not just fighting to have 11. You can have a team.
Well, one thing I'd like to jump in real quick. You talked about earlier about sometimes, when you get to Scott High, you got 5 middle schools coming in. I think this is going to be a great help because it's going to get you a leg up on that part of them playing together in that camaraderie when they get to high school.
I mean, I've always felt that way, but, I mean, that's not my decision, obviously. But, yes, I think that it could really help the high school program. I mean, one, we can start putting in high school terminology and stuff, and you can get a lot more in-depth with all that stuff, get with Coach Harris and all that. So I think it could help, yes.
Combining the two programs created some logistical problems.
It has.
It is not. I mean, you do not practice at Robbins. You do not practice at Fairview.
No, we practice
We
at
practice
Robbins.
at Robbins.
Everybody's
Robbins,
been
okay.
great with this. They get on a Boys and Girls Club bus from Fairview. They go to Scott High. They're at Robbins by 3:20.
Wow, that's great.
I mean, as
It-
far
it
as
is
being
what it is.
smooth, this thing is.
That was the easiest thing for us to do with the Boys and Girls Club bus going to Sky High and then to Robbins without having kids bring pads back and forth.
Yeah, we was willing to go get them and stuff like that. By the time we would go to training to get a bus,
Yeah,
like certified and all that.
For the first week, we were driving 13, 14 kids back and forth from Fairview, which I'm good with that. We were
Right.
doing whatever we had to do.
But, I mean, there've been no ego. It's whatever. I mean, we didn't have time, but like time's our biggest thing. We didn't get a spring. I mean, we was 2 weeks into the school year before, like, we even got the green light to do this, and it's just been all hands on deck, and I think it's worked pretty well.
Schedules, too, have been hard because
Well,
you'd already scheduled. Fairview had a schedule. Robbins had a schedule. Everybody had a schedule. And now suddenly,
right in that
which,
first week, we
which
get a
schedule
COVID.
do you follow? I mean,
Well, we went Robbins' schedule, so right off the bat, you lose the Robbins Fairview game because we're on there. Then Winfield cancels with us, and we're already behind, game-wise. We've called pretty much everybody in the state trying to find a game. We called Meigs County, Rockwood. We've got it, and everybody's full. So we're just kind of maybe somebody drops, we can find another game here in the next little bit. McQuarrie County called earlier today, but the times didn't work out with.
We're full on this end of the.
Yeah. So.
But, I mean, if somebody will give us the green light, that way we can just plan this out. Like, I really think it'll get going. I mean, there's some people talking about maybe just having one middle school team in the county, but that's not our decision.
Okay, so since you brought it up,
Right.
and we had not talked about this before we came on, and I know it is a controversial subject with some folks, but I did want to ask you guys, because you guys are both coaches, and you've been doing this for a long time at Fairview and at Robbins, but there's always been that talk. How much could Scott High benefit if there was a consolidated middle school program? We already do it with baseball and softball. Right. If it ever wanted to be done, it seems like now would be the time to kind of move in that direction with the numbers being low, and you guys are proving that it can work. What would be your thoughts on that?
It depends on how it's done. I mean, it could be anything, like anything in life. It could be bad or good. But if we'll plan it out and we actually, get everybody on the same page and, have a plan, because with football, like baseball, they just come with a bag. We got to have, a field house. We need weight room. If it's, a place to play, do we go to Scott High and stuff like that? But I think it could work.
Yeah, I'd be all for it. Like I said, maybe it helps your high school program. If it helps a little bit, that's enough. I've talked to Charles Golden, and they seem like they would be for it. So if they think it could help, I'd be.
Yeah.
To me, it would be a perfect situation.
And it's perfect time because, nobody wants to see Huntsville struggling with 20 kids, Birchfield and everybody like that. Everybody's used to maybe us at Robbins and Winfield having low numbers, but, when Fairview and everybody else is getting down, it makes people – they're just not happy with that.
Mm-hmm. To me, one of the biggest drawbacks would be right now when you got 5 middle school programs, then on any given play, you've got 55 kids on the field, whereas obviously with one consolidated program, you've got 11 kids on the field. And so a lot less opportunities for participation there. But for those kids that are going to go on and play at that next level, at the high school level, there are benefits there as well.
Well, that's always been the argument, was how many kids could play. But I firmly believe you could have just a 6th grade team, a legit JV team.
Right.
All these kids are getting reps all the time. Like right now, I think a lot of our 6th graders are apprehensive to come out and play football because if they come out of Fairview right now and you're in the 6th grade, you're going to have to play. You're going to have to step on the field, ready or not. You're going to have to play. That's scary for some 6th graders, 12-year-old, 11-year-old kid playing against a 15-year-old.
We had a few kids come out once they heard Fairview was coming just because those 6th graders knew, hey, I'm not going to be thrown in there in the grinder. I can just sort of learn and stand around a year and have some fun. It takes a special kid in 6th grade to be going against 13, 14-year-olds when they're 11.
So you guys envision something where you could potentially have basically an 8th grade varsity team and then a JV team, and then a true 6th grade team. So you'd really have 3 teams within that one program.
Within the one program.
And if you plan it right, you could have, I know Campbell County does a lot of elementary sports. You could still have Robbins, Huntsville, but it might be at the 4th and 5th grade level. because, well, I mean, we already got all the stadiums, we got all the field houses. So why not just have a 4th and 5th grade instead of like Storm getting that age? Maybe the county keeps it. And they're not traveling out, so you could still get your teams that way.
But like I said, with all 5 schools, I think you get enough 6th graders where you just have a legit 6th grade team.
Right.
And that would be so much better for them right now as far as reps, because I mean, a lot of those kids are just not ready to play varsity. They're just not.
Another issue that I was asking Rick and Harris Friday night, because obviously it was before my time, but when Scott High opened in 1971, what was the feeling like at Huntsville to have to give up because there was so much tradition and so much history there? And it would be kind of the same thing with middle school, because Huntsville's had a middle school program for a long time. Robbins has had a middle school program for a long time. Fairview and Birchfield's relatively new, but even at that, they both started my 6th grade year, which would have been, I don't even want to think about it. It would have been about 31 years ago. So, I mean, that's a long time, and having to give that up, would you foresee that being an issue, or maybe not?
I know a lot of people would be upset with it, because I think a lot of our people
sometimes that's the high point of their career, like, you know what I'm talking about?
That, and it's your community.
It's a
the
community
Fairview
thing,
kids
yeah.
are from Fairview, it's a community thing. So I think a lot of times they get behind that more than they do the high school. I mean, they identify as more Fairview than Sky High. I mean, I feel like that would be the uphill battle that you're fighting as far as that, because they identify as the place they live.
Right.
But the flip side of that is, I go back, David Gillum was at Scott High about, I guess, 2008, and I was talking to him, and he said, I do this experiment in my classroom, and he said, I'll go around and ask him, who's your favorite team? And this kid would say it's the Kansas City Chiefs, and this kid would say that it's, the Miami Dolphins. But then I got this kid over here that says my favorite team is the Huntsville Bears. And he said, we can't get by that middle school thing when we get to high school, and that's one of the main things that holds us back at the high school level. That's always stuck with me when he said that, because it really is true when you think about it.
It is, and even if they're not on the field as much, you got to think how that compounds at practice, because you're getting such a better look at practice. Like, our 8th grader is normally going against a 6th grader. They're not getting any look at practice. And now it's 8th grader on 8th grader, so they're just going to be that much better time you do a whole season of that kind of competition. I mean, it just compounds.
I was practicing with 9 kids before we combined. I had a guard playing corner. It was
a lot of running.
Rough life we had going on.
Talk about some of the kids that you've got that are 8th graders that we're going to be seeing at the high school level next year.
We've got a running back that I think can be really special. He's pretty young. His name's Skylar Thomas, and he's legit. In open field, he's as good as I've seen in open field. He's small, big kid, and he's pretty young for an 8th grader, but now he's legit a really good football player. We had a quarterback that threw for about 200 yards.
Wayland's doing a good job.
Wayland threw for about 200 yards Thursday night.
We got some big linemen that are green that's never played that much, but time they get in the weight room and figure it out, it snaps for them. I mean, they're going to be pretty good. I mean, I think we got, about 16 8th graders?
Yeah,
I mean, if they can keep 12 or 13 of those and then pick up some from Huntsville, I mean, the future looks bright.
We've got probably the best athlete I've ever coached is down there. If he ever figures football out, he'll be really hard to deal with. His name's Ashton Daugherty.
Yeah.
He's probably the best athlete I've ever had at middle school level. It's not all kind of came together yet for him, but now he's got the highest upside I've ever had a middle school kid, probably have.
Tall, fast, young. I mean, he's going to keep growing. I mean, if it ever clicks for him, I mean, he's probably a college player if it clicks.
He's really athletic.
Yeah.
Who do you have left on your schedule going forward?
We got Jellicoe tomorrow. If we win that one, I think we win the district, maybe have a chance for it. And then we got Birchfield and Summer at the end it.
So speaking of the district, since you guys combined, does that change which district you're in, or are you still in the same district?
No, still numbers-wise, we're still a single A team. We're around 160 kids combined, so that still left us single or whatever, but it left us on our same side as far as it's us, Birchfield, Huntsville, and Jellicoe on our side. But now, I mean, it doesn't bother me if we have to move up, if we can continue to combine or whatever we need to do.
Now, if we have one county school, we'll be 3A, so it'd be like Cherokee, Jacksboro, La Follette. But right now, I mean, 1A's got so many schools. I think we're, even combined with us and Fairview, we're about 160. It puts us about the 5th biggest school in 1A, because we're besides Winfield, 2 small schools in 1A.
So how is your working relationship been? Not that I would expect either of you to throw off on the other one, but it's unique. But the only time that I've seen something like this, as far as 2 guys coaching together, maybe back in the day at Oneida when Jimmy May and Keith Henry were co-head coaches from 2001 or so to 2004. You guys have each run your own programs, and now you're kind of being thrown into the mix together. How are you guys working together? Philosophy-wise, are you the same?
Definitely not philosophy-wise. We're really not the same as far as I hate defense. I hate linemen and I hate defense. I just want to do offense. If he lets me do offense, I'm happy. You know, if we can throw the ball and I can do offense, we're happy. Now I'm just gonna be honest. This is probably the most fun I've had coaching in a long time. It's been really fun. We can do a lot more stuff. We probably threw as much Thursday night as most middle school teams did the whole year. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, we're not having to be so conservative. Before, you was just so afraid milking the clock. You didn't want to snap it before just because you got to shorten that game. You got 14, 15 players over there. You can't just be up-tempo. We can about do anything we want, especially in offense. Defensively, we was missing probably our second-best football player that hurt us up the middle. But, I mean, still having an off night, they're still just having to grind out plays. I think, 8, 10-minute drive, have to run 14, 15 plays.
No, as far as us working together, it's been great. Like I said, I just want to do offense anyway, and I'm happy. As long as he leaves me alone down there and I can throw the ball a little bit, I'll be happy.
So you call the offensive plays, you call the defensive plays. That's why I'm getting it.
We work together. I mean, we don't see it that way. We're just wanting everybody to be as good as we can get.
Yeah,
there's no ego.
It's been fine. I'm used to working with people. I'm an assistant coach anyway, you know. I mean, as Jordan, I'm an assistant coach. I'm good with being in the
Really, we was
background.
doing the same thing before. It was just through text message and phone calls after practice or after a game, but now we're just in person and get to do it.
All right, guys, we thank you for joining us. Good luck tomorrow night against Jellicoe. We're going to take another break, and then when we come back, we'll switch gears a little bit and go from County Middle School football to Oneida Middle School football as we bring in Jason Terry. Welcome back to the IHSN Roundtable, live from El Rey. Thank you for joining us. Alongside Kevin Akers and Rick Keaton, I'm Ben Garrett, and also joining us now, the Oneida Middle School Indian head coach, Jason Terry. Jason, again, and we just saw you last week, but a phenomenal season that your guys are having so far, and you're just keeping it going so far.
It's going the way we want it right now. Big test this week. We'll try to keep it rolling, but so far the kids have bought in, and it's going well.
I need to ask you, I need to interject right here. I'm going to. Just how many times did you get hit in the side of the head with a football last week?
2 in the same day.
You've
heard the story.
I've heard the story. I sure have, there. And you're still able to come back and join us on the round table.
Yeah.
On purpose. Was it on purpose?
I'm not sure yet. One of them I know was an accident. The first one is iffy. So
I mean, drilled twice in the same practice.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, what I wanted to ask you about was last week against Oliver Springs. Y'all win that game 27-8. They scored with 5 seconds left to go. But, of course, everybody knows there's 8-minute quarters in middle school. That's 32 minutes. Offensively, y'all only had the ball a little over 5 minutes of that ball game. Just explain a little bit about that, of who your offensive key players are and how good they are and how quick you can score. You're just a threat to score at any play during the game.
Yeah, I think we had the ball, if I'm correct, 5 minutes and 16 seconds the other night. So we try to – I tell my kids, every play I want to score that play. So we have a multiple of athletes out there and a great offensive line going right now. So we can strike early and often if need be. Just to mention a few, and I hate doing that because I leave so many good kids out. But to start with the offensive line, they've been phenomenal this year. I told you a couple weeks ago that was maybe a spot that I wasn't so sure about in the beginning. They've worked their tails off. They come to work every day, and we've dominated some pretty good football teams up front. Now, at the skill position, the list goes on and on. You got both the Hill boys playing wide receiver. Ruger Rest has really stepped up this year at the wide receiver spot. You got Xander Lau and Cole Meredith, A.J. Harper at the running backs, and then Kenny McDowell's been a fixture with us for 3 years learning, and he's finally got his chance to shine this year. So, and again, I've left people out, but we got a good group right now.
Well, tell us a little bit about your kicker. I know that's something in middle school. That is something you do not get to see that often in middle school. You got a great kicker.
We have an outstanding kicker. Miles Laxton. Talked to Miles last year. He was a kid roaming the halls, played soccer. Everybody that knows me knows I like to kick the football. So talked to Miles. I said, come out and give it a shot. He had a great season last year. This year, stronger, faster, and he is booting the ball well. I know, Kevin, you've seen that a lot of our opponents start inside the 20-yard line, and that's because Miles kicking it to 10, sometimes the 5-yard line.
I think he had one go in the end zone earlier.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. So that's a weapon, like you said. Not only can he kick it far, he can kick it where I tell him to. And that's huge in junior high a lot. A lot of teams will put their best player on a certain side. We try to kick away from them. So he can directional kick it. And don't quote me on this, but I think he's 16 out of 20 this year in extra points. A couple of those were our fault. Kid didn't get on the field where he was supposed to be. Maybe a lineman missed a block there. So we're almost to giving it extra points and still waiting for that chance to try that field goal that he's wanting to so bad. So, but he's got
a pretty good range.
He does. Last Wednesday on our pregame, he kicked a 40-yarder. So in junior high, that's pretty good in my opinion.
That's good in a lot of high schools.
So.
But you got a big game coming up this week with Cherokee.
Yes, very big game. Cherokee, they're outstanding, well-coached. Coach Sieber, we're good friends. We've talked 2 or 3 times already this week, but they are well-coached. Told me he had 65 kids on the roster, so they're big, they're strong, they're fast, they're well-coached, and they do what they do, and they do it well.
Now, some people may not be familiar with Cherokee. Basically, that's Kingston.
It is. It's Kingston's feeder school, so yes.
So I'm not sure everybody knows. I work in Kingston. So, yeah, I hear the talk all the time.
So don't tell him anything. He's going to take it back to him.
I got you.
No, I wouldn't either. I tell him something different.
Anybody that knows me knows we're going to do what we do. You've been around a lot. I don't have a lot of gadget plays or tricks or this, that, and the other. We have a philosophy. We kind of stick to it, and we either execute and we're better than you, or we're not. So it is what it is.
Now, one thing I would like to ask you. Now, Tim Smith has told me this right when you first got into coaching, that your playbook was actually drawn up from PlayStation. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Actually, it wasn't. I know where his playbook came from. He was a JV coach at Scott High, calling the offensive plays in JV games. I mean, and done quite well because he loves offense, and that's what he wanted to be, was a play caller, and he done an excellent job at the high school level doing that for the JV team. So that's, Jason was a Scott High quarterback, Scott High coach, everything. And so, I mean, I've known him almost as long as, I have known him since he was born. So, I've known him a long time, man.
But I make no bones about it. You have certain philosophies. I'm a pro-I guy. I mean, that's just who I am. And I work for 2 of the best, in my opinion, in Bill Hall and Gary Sexton. So took a lot of their playbook and kind of intertwined it to my own, and a lot of the terminologies and philosophies that you've seen come from those 2 guys. So that's kind of what we do.
I got to ask you, Derek Boshears was just telling me this 5 minutes ago. Is it true that you've got the longest touchdown pass in Sky High history?
Unless it's got broken and I don't know about it. Yes,
and
that's correct.
It was how many yards?
97.
Real, to who?
Jason Sexton. He was from Norma, 1991.
Okay. Well, you're older than I thought you were.
So I was a senior the 91-92 school year, graduated in 92. So I don't think it has been broken. I kind of it was kind of a running joke when Coach Hall was the head coach and I worked for him. He couldn't throw it inside the 3-yard line because that was my record and I was keeping it. Now it's not the longest play from scrimmage, I can tell you that.
It's 99 yards the longest play from scrimmage.
Yeah, and I think unless it's changed, Jordan Jeffers has that.
So, and Rick, you would have been calling that game in 91, so you would remember. You can hold him honest here. Is he telling the truth? Because with Jason Terry, you never know.
He called it 91, but he can't remember it.
I think that he is very accurate.
So that would have been a Robert Wright play call?
It was.
Did he dial it up, or did you just kind of
No,
improvise?
it was basically a tight end hot pass. We were inside the 3, he spread the defense out, ran a little tight end hot, hit Jason. And there was a time there about the 50-yard line, I was launching him from the ground, that he got tripped up a little bit, and he almost went down. He stumbled. Kid reached out and grabbed his ankles, but he hung on and got to the end zone. So,
all right, Jason Terry, Oneida football. Good luck Thursday night.
Appreciate you guys.
Can keep it rolling.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll take another break. When we come back, we're going to slide our First National Bank players of the game from Friday night in. Welcome back to the IHSN Roundtable, live from El Rey and alongside Kevin Akers and Rick Keaton. I'm Ben Garrett. We're joined by our First National Bank players of the game from Friday night. And, guys, first of all, I got to say, Tim and his crew and Rick and his crew don't get together and coordinate these things. It just happens. But it's kind of ironic in that Clayton Carroll and Caden Terry not only are both play on the line, and it's not very often that linemen are players of the game, you know, because those guys that are throwing the ball and catching the ball and running the ball, they're glory hogs. You guys know better than anybody how that works. But that's just how it is in football. Yeah. That is kind of ironic that you guys are both players of the game. But bigger than that, you guys are both Robbins boys, two guys from the Johnny West system. Johnny was just here a minute ago. Played together in middle school, and Clayton goes to Scott High and Caden Donut. And you guys have been having some big defensive games the last few weeks. And so I'm going to start over here. Caden, 14 tackles against Rockwood on Friday night. That was a heck of an effort.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So on those 14 tackles,
yes, sir,
you have to know where you're going to get to be able to get that many tackles. So tell us, you know, as Coach Martin give you some keys to look for on how you position yourself to be able to get in that position?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I lined up on the guard for just about most of the night, and some of the keys he gave me was that the guards, they got back like really far, so it was really easy to tell when they were going to pull. And he said whenever they pull, I just need to get in their hip pocket and follow them to the ball. And that's what I did. They pulled a pretty decent bit, so.
So that's a good bit of good coaching right there.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. And on that, I know York was a team that y'all was looking at that it's going to be a tough game in the district. Of course, you got Rockwood and Monterey that you're looking at as well. What would you think, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, as far as the whole season altogether, what would you consider would be a team that would be maybe your biggest rival that you're looking
at? Like from here on, like, or just
the
in
whole
general?
season.
The whole season.
Each year when you go into the season, you're looking at one game think, I hope we kick their butt.
Oh, Rockwood.
Okay.
Easily.
There you go. How's Cofield fit into that?
They're close second, I'm telling you. I'd like to beat Cofield too. I'd like to beat everybody, but. Yeah.
So, off of that, what teams, and then I'm going to have to ask you to be honest, what teams does intimidate you a little bit?
Intimidate me a little bit? Well, York kind of intimidated me a little bit because their quarterback, they pounded it in our head that this guy was really fast and really really agile, and I was just worried about how we was going to get him on the ground, and I guess we didn't do too bad, but they passed on us a pretty good bit, and that's where most of their touchdowns came from.
All right, take me into the locker room here at halftime against York. Y'all find yourself down 28-0.
Sir.
I'm sure there was some conversation. I'm sure Coach May was probably pretty animated and saying some things that you need to do. Coach Martin, I'm sure, said things about stepping up defense. If you can, kind of tell us a little bit what went on in that locker room at halftime where you all come out and it was a completely different ball game. You actually won the second half 14-0.
Yes. We got in there, down 28-0 at halftime. Everybody's a little upset, to say the least. And Coach May was just there's a lot of stuff with the receivers, and it was just everywhere, honestly. But like to me personally, Coach Martin was telling us that like we need to stay on our blocks, and those linebackers were blitzing, so it was all like keep your eyes up and everything like that. So it was mainly just focusing on looking at the linebackers and stuff like that, getting our eyes up, getting off on them.
There's one other question I want to ask you, and then I'll let somebody else jump in. We talk a lot about the middle schools coming in, and I think we've got like 28th graders right now at Oneida Middle School, that hopefully all those guys will be coming up and joining the high school team. Coach Martin is your defensive coordinator.
Yes, sir.
And so what would you, an 8th grader that's coming in, might ask you, what can I expect from Coach Martin? What do I need to look for from him? What kind of person is he? What would you tell him?
He'll describe things to you in great detail to make sure that you understand it. And if you don't understand it, you can always go and ask him. I mean, don't ever be afraid to ask Coach Martin something, because he'll sit you down and draw the whole play out and just really inform you about what's going on, make sure that you know what's happening. So,
good deal.
All right, we'll swing over here now to Rick and to Clayton. And Clayton talked about Caden's 14 tackles on Friday night. You've been leading your team in tackles at least the last 2 weeks. You've led them in tackles. You had 10 tackles against Austin East last week, and it may be longer than that, but the last 2 weeks for sure you've led your team in tackles. So we talked about Elijah Phillips last week and how he's been Mr. Consistency at Oneida this season. You've kind of been Mr. Consistency at Scott High, that guy that can be relied on week in and week out.
Thank you.
He certainly can, and I mean, as an offensive lineman, you ask him, hey, what's your favorite position? He's a linebacker. He's a linebacker at heart. He wants to play on that side of the ball. Yeah. And it's good to see the effort that he puts out there because he has to sometimes chase down some ball carriers and receivers that, are quicker than gnats flying around my house sometimes, like that. But let's go back to Friday night, Clayton. Mm-hmm. You get off the bus at Carter, and you look – it seemed like it was a mile away where you guys had to dress at. Mm-hmm. You couldn't go back up there at halftime. It was so far away. Yeah. What does that do to the team, knowing that, you're so far away, you're going to get down the field, you're going to be on the field for the next 2.5 hours in one spot and can only move 50 yards away?
Obviously, it'll take a toll on him because it's kind of like playing at home and playing away. You feel a lot safer at home. It's your home spot. And even if you're away, you have that locker room that you've been in before, and you can the places that you can sit down and actually feel like you're connecting with the coaches, making those adjustments. But when they sit you on the side of the field next to a couple of practice soccer goals, you really feel like you can't focus, because whenever you go inside that locker room at halftime, it feels like you're in hyper focus on something. So whenever they put you on the side of the field, it's hard to focus, of course, with the fans, the band, all that stuff, and also just like the gravel. We are set on a gravel hill, right? So it's just not comfortable. You don't feel like you're not paying attention to the stuff that you need to be paying attention to.
It was a big road trip, a big game over there. Mm-hmm. You're under a new first-year coach in Coach Harris. You've got a new defensive coordinator. You've also got other defensive guys there that's provided no coaching to you. They're all new this year. Mm-hmm. What are you taking from the coaches this year and the emphasis the whole team has about dealing with new coaching?
It's going to change a lot of stuff, especially in the summer and the spring and stuff. Most people, most high schools, rather, focus a lot on summer and spring by working out, and just mostly focusing on their physical selves. But with us this year, especially, we had to focus on the mental and getting down the plays and learning basically this entire new playbook and this new system, and how we had to learn the new coaches' personalities. But it does help that Coach Golden did come from Birchfield, so most of our kids did know him. But still, it's just hard to, grasp the idea that everyone that you knew before, other than, Coach Fletch, everyone that you knew before is gone. So, at first you have to build connections with the coaches before you can really do anything with them. But Coach Harris and all the new coaching staff did a really good job with that. And also Coach Bill Hall, his son, Coach Billy Hall, they're really good at building connections, especially since they're up there in the school with us every day. Mm-hmm. There's real genuine people. So it was a lot easier than most other teams, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that was, I guess, the remark you're talking about. Last year, you only had one coach that was in the school. Mm-hmm. Everybody else was working on a job or working in another school. And this year, you've got some coaches up in the school. Mm-hmm. And that helps a whole lot because you can, I guess, sneak in some conversations with them during the day.
Yeah. And also, I forgot to mention Coach Wright, but he's also big help. But yeah, you can ask him questions during school, and it really helps that, Coach, multiple of our coaches are gym teachers. So if you ever have a question, you know exactly where they're going to be. Mm-hmm. They're going to be in the gym. So it's been a really big help, especially with the new playbooks and all the new plays we had to put in. And, yeah, it's just
Friday night at Carter. Mm-hmm. Another terrible half of football for the Highlanders. Mm-hmm. What do you see going forward? What have you seen? I guess the team started looking at Pigeon Forge film today.
Yes.
What have you seen going forward that we should be aware of about Pigeon Forge?
At first, I want to mention this. Today before practice, me and a couple other seniors decided to have a players-only meeting because, throughout the season, especially for not winning games, which we haven't won the games in Lord since my sophomore year.
Right.
That does something to you mentally. Like, you have to make sure you're sticking on it and, like, really giving encouragement to those players. So today we had a leadership meeting. We had a players-only meeting telling people, like, the season's not over. Like, we have played, like, just kind of, lack of better words, horrible games. Horrible. Where we can't get nothing's right. Like first half last game. It seems like we couldn't get anything right. Our linemen weren't blocking. Like, we couldn't tackle anybody. Like, balls just flying everywhere. Like, fumbles being returned for touchdowns. We just couldn't get anything going. So the very first thing that we looked at for this week was getting it in our players' heads that we still, like, the season's not over. We have a chance to go where we still wanted to go in the summer. And then in regards to Pigeon Forge, they are a really physical team, always have been, always will be, in my opinion. They run something that Coach Harris said he's never saw. They have a defensive play where they have 2 defensive tackles in the A gaps. So we're going to try our best to scheme around that because they're D tackles, especially since they're the only people along the line, basically. They're good players. Like, they're seniors. They've got all district, running for all state, I'm sure, this year. So we're just going to focus a lot on our line play on both offensive side and defensive side. So that's where our main focus is going to be this week.
And they do like to run the ball predominantly.
Yes, they
against their opponents.
They have they're a triple option team. They have the quarterback under center, and then they have a tailback right behind them, and then they have 2 wing backs, and they most of the time only have 1 wide receiver out wide. So they're not trying to trick you or anything. You know what they're going to do. They're going to run the ball either off the tackles or up the middle. So they're basically just daring you to stop them. So I believe this week, whoever will be the most physical team will win this game, is what I believe.
And just an interesting comment right now. When I stop by practice, and I'm there a couple of times a week, Clayton always comes over, speaks to me. He and Gavin Terry, before we even started the season, they came up and said, "Hey, when we get on our show?" And so our committee, it's not my committee, it's another committee, select you as a player of the game, just to show that we can be fair to linemen and linebackers and everybody else, so that you can be most valuable player, First National Bank Player of the Week that week. And but it's that extroverted attitude that he and Gavin have, along with a couple other guys, that's makes it fun to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Game, practice-wise or game-wise, it's always fun to be around him.
And I don't know what Gavin's excuse is, but Clayton acts like he's a preacher's kid or something.
Well,
sounds like a coach to me.
we have had on Thursdays, and this is a long-standing tradition with the Highland football team. They do it at Oneida too. Sort of devotional series where you have a speaker come in, and it used to be that we were reaching out, and pastors of churches and so forth would come in. And this year, I think we've had 3 players already lead the
2, but
2.
I'm going to be doing
That's what I thought.
in 2 weeks, I think, either 2 or 1 week.
I want to mention Brady Strunk and
Hugo
Henry. They've done it, and so Clayton's going to do that. And so, I mean, I'm talking more about football. I'm reaching beyond football. I'm talking about fine young men right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before you guys go, let me ask you this, because we talked about at the outset how you guys are both Robbins boys, and you played together in middle school, and you've known each other, been friends for a long time. I think you even go to church together. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir, we do.
So you go to church together. Then you wind up in high school, and I look back here a minute ago, and you're wearing your Scott High shirt, and you're wearing your Oneida shirt, and you guys were sitting back there like you're still friends, even though you go to different schools. And Scott High and Oneida don't play each other ever.
No.
But you're supposed to be rivals and hope each other loses every Friday night, right? Is that how that works?
Yep, that's how it works.
No, I think you guys. I'm thinking you guys can teach the adults something. Well, how does that work when you guys play together in middle school and one goes to one school and one goes to the other, and you remain friends?
Let me say this: what you missed was they shook hands standing right over there together.
There you go.
Well, I mean, what I said earlier was a joke. I hope you know that. But I mean, I mean, even with us going to middle school together and like going to church together and all that stuff, most of these boys have known each other and been around each other for all their lives. So it's not just we went to Robin's thing. And while we do want each other to lose sometimes, which it does happen, while we do hope that happens sometime, we're never not like hoping that our buddies are doing good or anything. Like it would be nice for us both to have great seasons. Like we always hope for that to be the goal. And what I really wanted to happen, we tried it last year with the whenever we had the COVID win against Austin East, and whenever they didn't have a scheduled game, we tried it there. Didn't end up working out, but I mean, I'd love to see for us to play because I mean, it's not like it was back in the what was it, 90s, 80s,
70s, and 80s.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was back then. I mean, there's still going to be intense rivalry, like a really great rivalry game. It's more than what it was back then. It's going to be great revenue for the county, which we desperately need. It's just like a lot of other positive outcomes would be coming from that game. So it's not just based on, oh, I want to beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, no, we're all kind of friends, or at least know of just about everybody on the other team. So
yeah.
I mean,
All right, Clayton Carroll, Caden Terry, congratulations on being the first National Bank Players of the game. Good luck Friday night.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we're not done. When we come back, we'll slide our legend of the game in. Welcome back to the IHSN Roundtable. We're live at El Rey alongside Kevin Ickers and Rick Keaton. I'm Ben Garrett. And now we bring in our legend of the game. And some folks object to being called a legend, but you take it or take it or leave it. You're our legend of the game.
I played with some legends, but I ain't one of them.
Jeff is legendary. It's not so much a legend. Jeff played at Scott High, played 4 years on the football team.
Jeff Buttram, by the way. Let's let everybody know
Oh,
in
yeah.
case they don't know.
And played for Coach Diggs for those 4 years there. And what I like about Jeff is all the other head coaches in his adult life that he has been on their staffs at both schools, Scott High and Oneida, and has done he's got a specialty, if there is a specialty for a coach, and that appears to be the defensive secondary. He's coached that at both schools. Let's talk about some of the coaches that you've had a chance to work with over the years.
Okay, well, the first one, as far as high school, I was coaching at Fairview, and Tony Lambert gave me a call in 2000, going into the 2008 season, and he asked me if I'd want to come and help him on his staff, and I said, well, I'd be interested in that because I'd always, wanted to do high school. I'd done everything else. I'd done Storm, middle school. Mm-hmm. So I went up there, and somehow or another, I thought I'd probably do D-line or O-line or something like that. And he said, well, I like people that played offensive line. He said, he always does that. John Brewster was another, had him as a defensive backs coach. And that's just that's how it all started, was with him. And then we was up there for 2 years. I had a great run up there. 1 year he was the head coach. 1 year John Brewster's head coach. Tony's the defense coordinator. And then Tony went to Scott as the defensive coordinator. And so when he got down there, nobody knew his defense but him. Right. So he was having to scream everybody into position. And so he called me up and asked me if I wanted to come down there. And so me and him and Keith met, and I ended up down there, done the DBs. Stayed down there to 2019. Tony come back up here, and he asked me if I wanted to come, and I said, well, I think I'll just stay for a while. And so I stayed down there to 2019. My stepson, when he finished, I gave it a lot of thought I was just going to quit.
Right.
And so I kind of retired, and I was probably out of it 3 weeks. Tony called me again. He said, man, I'm needing help with the DBs. So him and Robert, I went back up there with them again. And, of course, Tony left me again. And so I worked with Jimmy a year, and I thought I was going to retire again. And me and Carla, we don't ever get to do nothing. Right. One vacation a year during the dead period. And, football's full-time now in high school. And so we was finally going to get on some vacations and other things. And then Scott High's coach called me, and he said, man, I'm needing help. So I just love kids, and I love football. So I thought I'd just go down there and give it a try, and so that's where we're at. That's where I'm back at.
Jeff, by down there you mean Scott High, and up here you means at Oneida.
Yes.
So you can see the head coaches that he has worked with, the schools, the local schools, both Oneida and Scott High. And it's changed a lot. Football has changed a lot from the time that I'm going to say you played. Wing T, ends were next to the tackles. They were not split ends there like that. Defenses were, 6'2", 5'3", 5'4" most of the time. And now with the multiple offenses and everything just spread out, what a change. Talk about the changes being.
Well, just go back to when I played. I don't even think I was too slow. I'd be too slow to play a receiver now. And there ain't no way I could play offensive lineman like I did back then. I weighed 145 pounds to play guard.
Right.
And now there ain't no room for a 145 pound guard.
Right.
And then too slow to play outside as a receiver or running back. Possibly could play some fullback, but I mean even at 145 pounds, that's
small.
And I've told my kids, my boys, I tell the players, I wasn't all that good, but I'd hit you. That's what got me on the field. I wasn't afraid to hit. And matter of fact, I'd never leave the field because I was always afraid somebody's better than me to get in there and the coach would say, why am I playing him anyway? So, but it's changed. Everything's changed from when I played. I mean, it was just when I played, it was practice Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It was full pads, full board. It was wide open hitting from beginning of practice to the end, and it was 3-hour practices. I mean, you was beat to death. And as times went on, high school has really kind of went the way colleges used to be. On Mondays now, about everybody just comes out here in helmets and shorts, and you run a little bit, and then you go in there and watch film, maybe watch your game or watch the opponents that you're going to play the next week. And then Tuesday, you're full pads. Tuesday's usually, if you're going to do any hitting, a lot of hitting, that's usually the day you're going to do it. And then Wednesday, you're full pads, but you're kind of just thudding up a little bit. And then Thursday shorts. We did Thursday shorts, but at Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, when I played, it was wide open, full board. And when you got to a game, it was easy.
Right. Yeah. One of the reasons I like to think of you as legendary is the people that you've been around in football. Is there anybody we want to tell a story about tonight?
I got a bunch of stories.
I know you do. Not to embarrass him, but just to tell a story that I think people will appreciate.
I'm reluctant to tell this story because I'm afraid one of these kids will be hearing me, and I do not do what I was dumb enough to do. I wasn't smart enough to get out of the rain when I was a kid. But I blame this on Jared Carson. But, of course, they didn't have the kind of film set up now, that you can go in there and watch. They had them old reels. And me and a boy I played with named Mike Smith, and we was the two guards. And we was in our last period together, and our teacher would always let us out about 15 minutes early to go down there and get dressed. So one day we went down there, and Jared was down there, and he had that film in there, and he was watching it. And so we walked in there and sat down with him. So, what are you doing, Jared? He said, I was just noticing. He said, man, that front line on this kickoff right here said as soon as the kicker goes at him, they're turning around belling. He said, we could get an onside kick. He said, they've done it in both games we've got. Boy, I had that on my mind. And I played wedge buster right in the middle, right beside the kicker. I thought, if we get ahead in that game, I might just call that. So we got ahead. And I was out there, and old Bill was the kicker, Bill Hall.
Bill Hall.
And we'd huddle up, and Bill would stand there, and he'd look over at Coach Diggs. And Coach Diggs, he's always kicking it deep. I don't know if he ever kicked an onside kick. And he was hollering at Bill, and I said, Bill, Coach Diggs said kick onside kick. And Bill said, he did not. And I said, Bill, I'm telling you, he said kick an onside kick. And Bill looked over there at Coach Diggs, and Coach Diggs is screaming at him, saying, kick it. So Bill said, all right, boys. He said, onside kick. He said, now listen. He said, I'm going to run at that thing like I'm putting it through the end zone. He said, I'm just going to tap it. we get out there, and he kicked that ball, and he just tipped it. And that thing took one bounce, bounced right up into that lineman's hands, and he was standing there, didn't even know what to do with it. And finally, he just dives on the ground, and I thought, man, it hit me. Reality hit me then. I had done something real stupid, and I was fixing to be in bad trouble. It was the only one of 2 times I ever lied to Coach Diggs. Bill was going off the field, and Diggs was screaming at him. I mean, he hardly ever got on Bill. Well, that was one time he was ripping him. And I was on defense, so see, I didn't have to go off the field. So after that series, though, they was getting ready to punt. I went off, and Bill went, Jeff, said, tell him, said, you called that onside kick. And I looked over at Bill, and I said, Bill, I didn't call nothing. I said, you called it. And I'm telling you, Bill, he had it in for me from then on. But I knew this. I was smart enough to know this. He wasn't going to do much to Bill besides chew him out and give him a good tongue lashing. But I knew if I was the one that took the credit for calling that onside kick, I'd been sitting over there on the bench probably from now on.
Yeah, been running every day the following week. I mean,
now Diggs, I'll tell you, all the way up till right there at the end, his rules was never he wouldn't bend them for nobody. And this is another story on Bill.
This is not, by the way, this is not pick on Bill Knight, but Bill has done things that deserve.
He deserves it because he's always, they give him the nickname "Do It All Bill Hall." They give him the credit for everything. But I'm going to tell. So he didn't bring his uniform on Friday.
Oh yeah, I remember this one.
And if you didn't bring your uniform, he didn't give you another jersey. If you didn't bring your jersey, you didn't get a jersey. You didn't play, and I don't care who you was. Well, Bill had left his jersey and his pants, and his mom was supposed to bring them out there to him at 2 o'clock. Well, they took off to Knoxville, forgot about it. So she called somebody. They didn't have cell phones in. They ain't no getting a hold of nobody's cell phone. So she calls out to the school and tells them to get Bill. So Bill comes up there, and she said, Bill, we're in Knoxville. Said, I can't get your uniform. And so Bill's in a panic. Well, he knows better than go to Coach Diggs. So he goes to Coach Williams. He says, Coach, I ain't got my uniform. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Coach Williams knew that Diggs wouldn't let him play. So Coach Williams gives him his keys to his truck. And he says, listen, Bill. He said, you go straight to Paint Rock and you get them uniform. And he said, you get straight back here. He said, no pit stops. Well, of all the ways to get to Paint Rock, instead of staying on the highway, Bill decides to go through Mine Rock Road. If you don't know where that's at, that's up beside where Marvin Hewitt used to live.
Back up to Paint Rock.
Crookedest road there is in the county. Well, he goes down there and runs in the ditch. Well, Bill ain't got no sense. He don't know. I mean, the truck is sunk plumb to the pumpkin on the thing. It ain't moving, and he's sitting there forward backwards for 20 or 30 minutes. So he gets out of the truck, and he's seen smoke coming off the tires. Well, here comes, there's a Laxton. He's a farmer up there. He goes and gets the tractor. He said, you ain't going to get out. He said, I'll have to pull you. So he goes down there and hooks to him, pulls him. Well, in the meantime, here we all are. We're all getting ready to load up on the bus, and Diggs ain't even noticed that Bill ain't around. And Coach Williams is pacing. I mean, he's a nervous wreck because he's afraid he's going to have to go to Coach and tell him that, Well, all of a sudden, here comes Bill, and that old tire, I'm telling you, it's wobbling when it comes in, and it's still smoking. And Bill gets out of that car, or truck, and he starts crying. He said, Coach, I burnt your tire off. Well, what we didn't know, and he didn't even tell us, he told us many years later, 4 or 5 years ago, he told us. He said, the day before, and now you knew back then teachers didn't make no money. Right. He said, the day before, we had just went and put 2 mud grip tires on that thing. And he said, now on a teacher's salary, he said, you had to get ready for the winter. He said, that's so we put them mud grips with them spikes in it. Remember everybody used to do that? Mm-hmm. Well, Bill burnt the right one off. There was nothing left. It was as slick as this table right here. And Teddy said the next day, he went back out there and he went, you remember them tires I put on? He said, yeah. I said, put me another one on just like it. But Coach Diggs never did know no difference. I think I told him 4 or 5 years ago on Moke's porch over there and he just shook his head. He said, I can't believe you just covered that up for him. But, we all knew when Coach Diggs had a rule, that's the way it was. But you know, when he got a little bit older, it seemed like we all kind of mellow out or ease up a little bit, and he kind of started breaking his own rules, and it kind of ended up coming back to that probably was his demise, you know, at the end right there whenever when they finally ended up having to let him go, you know. But
it's sort of, like I said, mellowed a little bit and sort of lost control of the players
he
out there on the field.
Yeah, he did. But I tell you, when he was younger, he was something else. He was something else. And, you know, I got to coach with him. I always wanted my boy, I thought, man, I just like for my boy to get to play with him for him one time. So he ended up at Huntsville. And both of them got to play for him all the way through. And I got to help him. And I learned a lot about him. You know, he was different then. We'd sit in there and talk for hours, and he'd just tell me them stories of him being in the military and this and that. It was just awesome to get to know that side of him.
And people, I always thought he was gruff stuff. He was actually, you know, away from football, now out on the football field. He was an easy person to talk to, could joke with him, and all kinds of things. It's remarkable.
One more story, because everybody's asked me this, and they wanted me to bring this up. They wanted to know about the 113-3 or whatever it was over Sunbright. Now, this is what he told me. He's back in. The football coach was the girls' basketball coach.
Right. Was hired when they hired a football coach. His other job was a girls' basketball coach, and back then it was 3-on-3 girls basketball.
And he had a loaded team. Had his daughters, two of his daughters was really good. Had Marilyn. I guess her name was Laxton then. Marilyn King now, is that right?
That's right. Her sister Jackie.
They were all, they were loaded. And so Sunbright knew they couldn't beat them. So what they done is they just got up there and froze the ball. Started passing it around. Well, they were athletic enough that they got enough steals. I think the score ended up being like 10-7, and Huntsville ended up winning. But
we're talking about the basketball game.
Yes, basketball. And it made, I don't know why it made coaches so mad. He said it made me so mad I couldn't stand it. And he said when that game was over, he said we were shaking hands. He said I told that coach, because he was a football coach too down there. He said when football season comes up, you won't be able to freeze the ball. He said I can promise you. And so he didn't. And that's where the 100 and something to what
record-breaking game for Eddie Burge.
For Eddie Burge, sure was.
It may still be. I don't think he is, but he's number 2 on the list maybe in scoring in a game in Tennessee high school history.
Because I know it used to be in the Guinness Book of World Records, but I don't know if it still is or not.
I've got that information. I didn't show it to you the other night, but I've got something that Raymond Thompson prepared for the Scott County News in 1992. It covers Huntsville, Oneida, and Scott High, and all the individual records and stuff like that, the touchdown passes and length and all that stuff that we need to whip out on the show one night. It's a remarkable piece because, like I say, this is 92 and earlier, and when we go over some of this information, people are going to say, who's that? I've never heard of that person. And, so football's been around since the 30s for Oneida and the 50s for Huntsville, and then 71 for Scott High. So a lot of things have happened over the years, and I wish it would really kept up with that better.
Well, Raymond Thompson he may be the only person in Scott County that I know of who is more knowledgeable about high school football than you and Tim Smith. Tim's got all the Oneida stuff. You've got all the Scott High stuff.
Oh, Woody's got it. Woody's
Woody.
The guy. And Leatt, we need to credit both of them.
Leatt's got a lot of stuff.
But Raymond has put in a lot of time researching over the years and compiling those records and statistics, for sure.
And we need to go over them sometime on this program. We really do.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're just about out of time. You got to stay with us and you're in a little bit unique situation because you're a coach. We started last week and we had Stan Pennington on, and Stan, he likes to talk more than anybody. We made him pick the winners of the game. Now, it's not fair really to make you pick the winner of the Scott High game because you're a coach and you're not going to pick against your team.
Nope.
But we're going to make you do that. We're going to talk about the games coming up Friday night right after this. Welcome back to the IHSN Roundtable from El Rey. This is our final segment as we get ready to wrap it up. Guys, we talked about the fact that Friday night is homecoming for both Oneida and for Scott High. Oneida will be playing Northview Academy, kicking off at 7:30 at Jim May Stadium. Scott High will be playing Pigeon Forge. That also kicks off at 7:30 at Highlander Stadium. I'm going to start over here, Kevin. At first glance, Northview Academy comes in as a team that is struggling a little bit. They lost to Austin East last week in overtime 26-20, but to be fair, a much improved Austin East team. 2 weeks ago, Northview Academy stunned everybody when they put 70 on the board against Claiborne. So what does Oneida have to do to get the win?
Well, not only did they put 70 on them, but when they played West Green, they put 44 on them. So, I mean, you know, I don't care who you're playing. When you can put 70 points on a team in 48 minutes of game time, that's pretty good. And that's somebody that's obviously can score fast and often. So they're defensively, Oneida's going to have to be ready to go against Northview Academy. They're going to can't be letting them get by them on passes and stuff, and they're just going to have to really be smart, as Caden said earlier. You know, they're going to have to go defensively and be paying attention to what's going on. And you can't. The last two games, to be honest with you, Oneida seems like they've come out flat to start the games, and they've picked it up as it's went along. It was to their advantage a few weeks ago, and then it cost them there against York. And you can't do that against Northview Academy. You're going to end up in the losing side again. So I believe they've learned a lot, and especially in that game last week. When they come out in the second half and defensively did what they did, I think that's going to carry over to this week, and I believe that Oneida will get Northview Academy this week for homecoming.
That was a game, by the way, Oneida won last year up there at Northview. I believe the final, if I'm remembering right, was about 19-0. But, again, much different, especially on the offensive side of the ball. It's a much different Northview team this year.
Yes.
All right, swing over here to this side. Scott High hosting Pigeon Forge on Friday. Again, Pigeon Forge team on paper, they're struggling. But when you look at their schedule, they played Hampton to the wire. That's a team that a lot of people think will win the state championship in Class A. And they did fairly well against Alcoa last week. Now, they got beat, but who doesn't get beat by Alcoa? 46-20 was the final in that one. And we'll utilize Coach Buttram, since he's sitting here as well and has seen the film. So for both of you guys, what does Scott High have to do on Friday night against Pigeon Forge?
I'll take the offensive side.
Okay.
I think the line needs to hold up. I expect Pigeon Forge to be physical, both lines, offense and defense. So I think our offensive line has to hold up. For us to be successful, we have to throw the ball. And to be successful doing that, we have to allow the quarterback time to get rid of the ball and our receivers to be able to run their routes and get open. So I'm looking for the Highlanders to try to find consistency, make every possession a valued possession, and try to put touchdowns with every possession. That would give us a huge advantage to be able to do that and to keep Pigeon Forge defense on their heels.
Yeah. Defensively, me and Billy, we went out there at the field house yesterday and broke everything down, and they're about a 90% run now. You know, maybe they'll think.
Maybe they'll watch film
maybe
of our
they'll
previous
want to
games.
work on the passing game and throw it more, don't it? But in the two games, I think they threw it 13 times. So, I mean, you know, we're going to need to get enough people in the box to try to stop the run. Now, that's going to be a task. But, I mean, we had a great practice today. Great practice. And I've only been out there. It's been my second week, but it's the best practice since I've been out there. I think we got a good chance. I know when they did throw it, they were throwing it into coverage. I think out of the 13 passes he threw, I think he threw 2 or maybe 3 picks. Now they had a lot of success against Alcoa. Most of it was in the second quarter with about 2 or 3 minutes to go. They come out in this formation, and evidently Alcoa hadn't seen it, and it was their ones. It was Alcoa's ones, and they was shredding them. Now they come back out in that same formation in the third quarter, and it ended up being about 4th down to 40 because Alcoa changed a couple of things. And but you know, I just think we got to get enough people in the box. I think if we can stop the run, make them throw it, I think that's how we're going to make them beat us. I think we got a good chance.
There you go.
All right, so if we're going to pick winners, let's start with that Oneida and Northview game. We'll start over here. Who you got on Friday night?
I got Oneida by 14.
Rick?
I got Oneida. I'm not sure about 14, but I'll stop at Oneida.
Jeff?
I've got Oneida. I think that second high is going to carry over.
All right, and we'll start on this end, going back around on Scott High. Probably shouldn't even ask you. You're not going to take Pigeon Forge in this game.
I'm always going red.
And I'm not going to take Pigeon Forge either, because the light will suddenly come on for our team. And Jeff knows this. In the 2 weeks he's been down there watching the program, we've tried to hit more defensively in our defensive practices. I think we have in practice. It hasn't made it to Friday nights under the lights. So.
Do you want to be the oddball?
No, I'm not. I'm going to tell you why. I was impressed. What was the young man's name that was Player of the Week for Sky High again?
Clayton Carroll.
Clayton. The meeting they had today, getting the players together and doing that, I think that's going to go a long way. And I think you're going to see something this week that you haven't seen all year at Sky High. I think you're going to see a team come together and meld together. And I look for Sky High to win that game.
Like Kevin, don't
I like his thinking.
Yes, indeed.
All right, last thoughts before we close this thing out.
One thing I want to mention right quick that I'd be in trouble if I didn't. You play a little golf, haven't you?
Yeah. I didn't hit your house.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have, but yeah. I have to mention this. My son got together with some of his buddies today and went over and played golf. And on hole number 2, using an 8-iron, he got a hole-in-one today on number 2.
That's where I had my hole-in-one on number 2.
Me too.
I had mine on 9.
No, I'm serious. I don't know about you.
I had one. I had to play for about 30 years before I ever got one. He's been playing for about 5, and he gets one. So there you go. Congratulations.
That's great. That's great.
So am I the only one at this table who's never had a hole-in-one? Jeff, you have?
I've had one.
Well, there you go.
What about putt-putt? Did you?
I can't get a hole-in-one in miniature golf. I absolutely cannot. All right, Friday night, Pigeon Forge and Scott High, Northview Academy and Oneida will have both of those games with kickoff at 7:30. Games coming up between now and then that we won't have. Scott High soccer will be on the road tomorrow against Clinton, a big district game. Oneida soccer will be on the road at Sevier County, both of those times at 6:30. Also, Oneida on Thursday will be on the road in soccer at Rockwood. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next Monday night, again, back here at El Rey with the Roundtable. Until then, good night.